it's like there's something objective about a meme. Or, something like we all know like when a meme sucks or when a meme is good. Like there's some like objective content there. Like really good meme is like so rich. Like a picture, it says 1,000 words. A good meme says like 100,000 words of cultural commentary in a single image.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got the NI boys here today. Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi, with a very, very special guest, Luke Burgis. Welcome to the show, man.
Man, thanks so much for having me, guys. This is a long time coming. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, we referenced we've referenced your book several times on the pod. And so for people who don't know who you are, you're the author of a book called Wanting. It's a legendary book about the French philosopher René Girard and his idea Mimesis. And you've also got two Substacks, Anti-Mimetic and Ride or Die. I don't know if there's anything else I missed out.
I like that one. Ride or Drive, but I like that. Ride or Die. Yeah.
There we go.
I like that.
I was writing the notes, and I know you used to listen to or I don't know if you still do listen to hip hop. In your book, you're mentioning that you listen to hip hop back in the day. So Ride or Die, it sounds more appropriate.
Yeah. No, it's supposed to evoke that for sure. No, huge hip hop fan, man. I'm a child of the '90s. I grew up with hip hop.
Who are we talking here? Give us your. We always talk. Every other episode we talk about it. What are your top three, like from the '90s?
From the '90s, Nas. Let's see. Nas, Pac. Who else did I like? And Bone Thugs and Harmony. So I'm from Michigan, man. So like we got that Midwest connection. And East 99 Eternal. I must have listened to that nonstop for a good
Crossroads,
18 months.
when that song dropped.
Dude, so good.
I think East 99 it's one of the best-selling albums of all time. I think it's 30, 40, 50 million records.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I've heard that song probably 1,000 times, and I learned last week that it was about Eazy-E. I didn't even know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah, because he's a mentor for Bone Thugs. Yeah, well, so I
think he's in the music video too. That just shows like how aloof I was when I was in junior high and high school.
So I know this is the first show that might even have advice actually, because for the listeners that aren't familiar with Mimetic Desire, Luke is the guru. I know you hate that word too, so I shouldn't have said that. But Bilal, can you actually whip up meme of the week?
Well, yeah,
because
we've got
it's not a meme this
here.
week, but we were in a group chat and we had to ask you. So White Lotus, the HBO show, referenced Mimetic Desire. So for the listeners that aren't seeing the screen here, there's a scene of one of the characters and he says, you have a bad case of something. It's called Mimetic Desire. Now, Luke, did HBO reach out to you? Have they kicked you up any royalties? What's going on here?
Man, I haven't seen a red penny from that. No. I don't know the backstory for that. I really don't. It was crazy. Like I wasn't watching White Lotus. My wife wanted me to watch the first season, and I was like, no, I'm not going to watch that. And then one day, my phone was blowing up with text messages, and they're like, "Did you know about this?" And I was like, "Oh shit! Now I got to watch this whole season." It was good. It was good.
Oh, so you did get that? Was the represented? I mean, they nailed it, right? Like
Yeah, no, I don't. I think they got it right, man. It was the Rivalry they got right. I had all kinds of, because I knew it was coming when I started watching the season. So I was like, how deep are they going to go here? Like with the scapegoat, is it just going to be a mimetic rivalry between these two guys? I had all kinds of fantasies about like one of them walking out. If you've seen the show, like they often have breakfast in the morning, in this beautiful resort. I had these fantasies of one of them, walking out there with my book on the table or something like that, and like doing a cameo. But because they had a couple of books, that didn't happen. But I thought it was pretty good. It was a nice
fantastic. I'll pass it off to Jack here, mostly because you two have worked in the past, some inside baseball.
Yeah, how did you guys connect, by the way? Jack and Luke.
The Twitterverse, I think. I can't remember if it was an intro, Luke, or if we just sort of algorithmically were introduced somehow.
Algorithmically introduced is incredible.
I think we were algorithmically introduced, man. Like during the pandemic, there were some people, there were like, I don't know, a half a dozen people that I saw every single day. And Jack was one of them. So the algorithm must know that I like his work.
I think Jack and Trung were both there, yeah.
we did a great, it was 2021 now, right, Luke? We did a collaboration for the launch of Wanting. Did a little collection called Visualizing Mimesis. We should put that in the link in the notes. Unfortunately, I think the platform that went live on is not showing it somehow, so we need to find a way to get that back up.
Jack, is it not on the chain though? What's going on?
No, it is, but the front end is compromised right now, so we need to figure out a way to display it. But man, I was reading through what you wrote for that the other day, Luke. Prescient. Superb.
Yeah. Can we walk through some of these visuals? And I guess at this point now would be a good time for us actually to send Luke with the, could you hit the TLDR on what Mimetic Desire is for the listeners that may not know?
Yeah. If we're going to pull it up on the screen, I don't even remember exactly what I wrote. So I'm interested to see.
Man, I want to read exactly what you wrote for this, Luke, this class. It's short. I'm going to do it. So I'm not going to steal the thought Luke's thunder here, but I'm gonna read the. It
might be better than anything I had to say, so just go for it.
All right. So we did this thing called Visualizing Mimesis, a collection. We did like 3 illustrations, and Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, but the advent of the popularity of NFTs coinciding with the launch of the book,
100%,
kind of was a ripe, fertile ground for writing. This was like GME, like that. You open this passage with GME, so let me just read it. It says, memes are stuff, mimetic desire is movement. On January 25th, 2021, GME looked like 4 meaningless characters on a screen. On January 26th, 2021, a movement of 92.71%. GME meant something, represented the desires of thousands, then millions. Behind the stock ticker were people looking to other people, wanting what other people wanted. Desires aren't static, they're mimetic. They rise and fall on the strength of others' desires. The memes are just along for the ride. The memes are code, shorthand for the desires. The price of memes are a signal, and the signal that they're sending is this: people want what other people want, down to the nth circle of hell or to the moon. We're wanting. Class.
That's beautiful.
Incredible.
Do we have the visual there, or you can't find it?
The visual
I can't pull
is great.
it up, but we'll put it. I'm gonna do the last part of it as well. It says, value isn't in the eye of the beholder, it's in the eyes of the other beholders, beholding me beholding and wondering why. Value isn't subjective, it's intersubjective, it's generated in the space between people. It's me looking at you, looking at me, looking at a $12 million stuffed shark and wondering why not 13. The scene setting that Sotheby's and Christie's do, the valet service, black ties, and mimetic martinis only work through the organ of eyes. There's an inner eye, though, that works in our new digital auction houses. It sees everything, it feels everything, it has no need for bright lights or the sound of the gavel. It might seem unclear who the auctioneer is in the space, but I'll tell you who or what it is: Mimetic Desire.
Yo, when you're now that meme of that guy saying, yo, let him cook. Yo, hold up, let him cook.
Let him cook
this
now.
guy cook.
Yeah, look, I understand why you like Bone Thugs now, because that sounded like a Bone Thugs verse that when he was going up and down, I was like, Notorious Thugs about to come on right now?
Get busy Bone on that track. Just let him
hit it.
We need
to get Timberland to make a beat for us, man. The dope beat.
Stick that in GPT.
Yeah.
We can get a track made today,
yeah,
probably.
that was a fun project, Jack. There's something about playing off of each other with that, the visuals informing the writing, and the writing helping with the visuals. And it was the same thing with the book. I hired an illustrator for the book. So it's full of these funny, goofy little illustrations. I worked with an illustrator from the New Yorker. And, I paid for it out of my own pocket. I don't know, publishers don't pay for that stuff. You know what I mean? But it was so important to me to have the visuals in the book. And I actually found that it helped me to write, thinking through what those should look like were helping me figure out how to say it and vice versa. And I had the same experience with you, Jack. It's awesome. And I want to do it again. It's so.
Yeah, man, we definitely got to do something else for sure, man. It's so these ideas, obviously the timing of the launch of the book, it just feels like the way in which the world is behaving right now. That is the exponential force in most of the things we talk about on this podcast, and the connectivity that now exists that exposes that and obviously rides it up and down and creates this mad volatility. It's very It came out in 2021, the book, right, Luke?
2021. Yep, summer 2021.
Yeah. It's going to be a classic, man. Or people refer back to that.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's funny, like I could have never I could have never planned the timing like that, man. I mean, I pitched that idea in early 2019, and I had no idea, what the world is going to look like. Obviously, I mean, the pandemic, but also NFTs, and it came out at the perfect time, depending on how you look at it, to help us kind of make sense of what was happening in the world. Yeah, man, it's funny how that works. Definitely funny how that works. I mean, back in and it's funny, like memes weren't really, memes have been a thing for a long time, but it wasn't really, in my opinion, it wasn't until the pandemic that I started seeing like really killer memes. But everybody had more time on theirs. I saw an article in the New York Times from 2018, I think last week. And it was like, New York Times talks about the best memes from 2018. And dude, they are terrible. They're not even. So like, and it, right. It lists like the top 10 memes from 2018. And I think number one is the hot duck that appeared in Central Park in New York City. The hot duck is just literally an image of this multicolored, I don't know what some Asian duck or something like that. It's like, that's not really, is that really a meme? Just a picture of the duck.
You want to know what you're describing me, what it feels like? You know when you're watching game tape of like the 1980s basketball and like one guy takes a three during the entire game, and you're like, this is just a different game. Like this is not Steph Curry taking 12 threes a game from 35 feet, right? I think that's like the meme evolution. It's like, I love the way you describe it. That's a good way to put it, yeah. And I've only memed for like, me personally for like the last 2 years. Like I followed meme culture for the past decades on Reddit and whatsoever. But I think the main thing, and I think you touched on it, is it's now just touches everything, right? Like no matter what industry you're in, and you're seeing it now is a lot of like niche Twitter influencers, like Alex Sue, my buddy is like a lawyer, right? And he does like legal memes that didn't exist like 1 or 2 years ago. But now he just takes all the templates that everybody else uses for like whatever meme it was, like tech or pop culture. And it's just like he's playing it to the wall. And I think that's what I've seen that probably makes this meme explosion feel like so meaty. It's like every industry now, right? You could be like a recycling expert and start using these memes.
Yeah. It's crazy because I mean, there's something. I mean, I never really answered your question, like the TLDR on Mimetic Desire. It's like there's something objective about a meme, or something like we all know like when a meme sucks or when a meme is good. Like there's some like objective content there. Like a really good meme is like so rich. Like a picture, it says 1,000 words. A good meme says like 100,000 words of cultural commentary in a single image. But then there's something subjective about it too, right? Like it's kind of in what Jack and I worked on together. Like certain memes like take hold, they catch fire, they become mimetic. So I almost think of meme as like the thing, like it's like a noun, and mime which is the root of the word mimetic, is like the verb, right? Like miming versus memeing. And when a certain meme kind of catches hold, because whether it's because Elon created it and tweets it, I mean, that's a nice way to get traction for a meme. But the two of those things together are super powerful. So like the mimesis, like just add, I think the mimesis can make a bad meme kind of viral, but it can't really make up for a bad meme. But when it's added on to a good meme, something like exponential happens to it, and it becomes, it just becomes its own thing, right? It takes on a life of its own.
And the origin of the word mime is like to copy, right? To mimic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the roots.
To mimic. Yep. That's the root. So, mimesis comes from a Greek word that basically just means to mimic, to imitate. So, when you hear mimetic, just think mime or mimic. And it's, the bane of my existence for the last 2 years have been people spelling it mimetic, M-E-M.
As a meme?
Yeah,
Mimetic,
right?
Yeah, like an app or something, right?
Exactly, but that's actually a word that refers to like mimetic theory from Dawkins, right? It originally came from Richard Dawkins back in the 70s or 80s. I can't remember which. It might have been the 60s, to be honest. But mimetic is with an I, and just think mind and think like movement, think action when you hear that. Whereas a meme is something that's a little more static.
I just want to give some reference for listeners that actually aren't familiar with Mimetic Desire at all. And this is, I think, chapter 1 of your book. And you actually go to the evolutionary like foundation of why, we are mimetic creatures, why we look to models to copy and follow. And all I know is this: when I was listening to that part of the chapter, because you're talking about kids, right? Even like newborns. The idea of mimetic desire just hit me like a hammer when I was watching my kid playing. Like he'll be at the library playing in the shared play area. Some kid there'll be a block there. No one gives a shit about the blocks. No one gives a shit. And then one kid grabs the block. My kid just does a beeline towards that block that he's ignored for the last 30 minutes. And like, that's the only thing I need to know, that humans are fully mimetic animals, and just from day one. And that for me was the most crystallizing thing that ever happened around like Rene Girard and mimetic. It's like, that happened when my kid was probably 18 months old. So this is 3.5 years ago. But that to me was like, that's it. If you have a kid, you'll understand it immediately.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and you turn 10 toddlers loose in a room that has 10 equally cool toys. There's one for each of them. They're not just going to each choose a toy. They're going to converge on one or two of them. And the craziest thing that happens is that they reinforce each other's desire for the same toy. And they literally reinforce it. So I'm an only child, so I was really good friends with my cousin when I was a kid. And this happened with baseball cards. So I collected baseball cards when I was growing up. And he would basically like mimetically hack me to make me want baseball cards and increase their value, like, if his friends thought a baseball card was really cool, then I thought it was really cool. I didn't know how much these things were worth. I didn't have like Beckett magazine. I wasn't looking up values of these cards. I mean, the value was completely subjective, depending on how much I liked the player, how cool the picture of the player was, and like all of these like subjective factors. So I'll never forget, the greatest trick he ever pulled on me was he had a card of like some no-name player, and it had like somebody had written like the name on the back of the card in a marker, right? It's like ruined the card, like took like a magic marker and like written the name like Kyle on the back of the card or something like that. And he goes, "Oh, that's actually like that player's kid. That's his kid who signed that card." And like all of us fell for it. And they ended up trading away like 50 of my best cards to get that one card.
Here, how about Ricky Henderson rookie card? And right. I don't need this Babe Ruth one anymore.
I want that one. Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. And it's not that much different as adults.
Yeah, I think, which is why this next question is very related, and I think makes it super tangible for people, is, in your book, you talk about how Steve Jobs was influenced by Robert Friedland. So I actually know Robert Friedland because he's a Vancouver mining guy. Like, I don't personally know him. I know a lot of people that do know him, and his reputation is much different than, I guess, like how it's described in the book. The TLDR about Luke's book is that Steve Jobs was at Reed College was that Portland?
I think so, somewhere.
Yeah, it was in Oregon, and he basically met some dude who is now a mining billionaire, but at the time was just a college guy I guess in this instance that he met him, he was having sex with his girlfriend, and Steve Jobs just walked in on him, and the dude just didn't even care. He's just like, "Hey, listen, we're here to do a transaction, like so some type of computer, and I don't mind that you're here. Let me finish my deed." And then the whole point is that Steve Jobs watched somebody and just didn't give a shit about rules and like lived by his own code. And so my question was, Steve Jobs obviously became one of the greatest creators of Mimetic Desire and like wielding that tool. I don't know if that's actually true. I don't know if you would believe that, but who would be on like the Mount Rushmore? Because in my mind, it was like Steve Jobs obviously might be on the Mount Rushmore, but who's like on the Mount Rushmore of Mimetic Desire? Like who has historically been some of the, I've been called 20th century, maybe you don't need to go back all the way to like, I don't know, Jesus or anything, but in the 20th century.
Jesus will have that one.
Right? It's like,
because that was going to be my answer, man. It's
yeah.
Jesus. That's a tough question. Yeah, so that story was Jobs walked in and he saw this dude who just seemed to be operating on a different level of desire. And somebody said that Friedland had what they call a reality distortion field, and that Jobs kind of also had one, and that Friedland was his model. So you think about the kind of people that can distort reality around them with like a single tweet or something like that. I mean, Elon for sure, comes to mind. I think any meme lord is a distorts reality in some way, and if they know how to kind of hack mimesis well, I think, I tell the story in the book. I mean, Eddie Bernays, right, was like probably the godfather of this kind of distorting reality. I mean, he's in the early 20th century, he's basically considered the father of modern day public relations. And every stunt that he ever pulled to get people to do anything, including getting women to smoke in the 1920s when it wasn't really popular, pretty much only men smoked. He orchestrated stunts and essentially used mimetic desire to get people to do what he wanted them to do, right? So in the case of of getting women to smoke, he was hired by the guy that ran the American Tobacco Company, and he wanted Lucky Strikes to become popular, and women are half of the market in this country. He's like, how do I get women to smoke? And Bernays orchestrated this crazy stunt where on the Easter Day parade, when they all, paraded down Fifth Avenue, which would be like the equivalent of the Super Bowl today, everybody was watching it. He planted Lucky Strike cigarettes on a bunch of really fashionable women that were walking down the street, and kind of got them to whip them out and start smoking them at around the same time. It looked totally spontaneous. And it was this act of defiance because, no women didn't smoke in public, especially. And from that day forward, it just caught on and was super contagious. So like, he's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. If we're going all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century, I think with the advent of memes, man, like Elon has got to be up there for sure. And there are positive ones and there are negative ones, right? I mean, I think they're like a lot of, we talk about mimetic desire. We usually talk about it like in a negative sense, like people getting us to kind of like pull us away from what we really want or something like that. But I think there are positive examples too. And I think when we talk about the Mount Rushmore, like we're just thinking about the people that everybody knows, but parents are the greatest models of desire, right? In the positive sense. And anybody who's a parent, or, I mean, I'm a teacher too, and I see the way that I affect my students. So it kind of gives me like this added sense of like responsibility, right? Like, they're not just paying attention to what I say, they're paying attention to what I show them that I want. And they can read between the lines and they can spot bullshit a mile away.
So I love that. And I think you mentioned in your book that even you writing the book was like you falling into mimetic desire a bit, right? Is like, obviously, so like times. The idea of being an author is like a model of what, I don't know if you want to be a public intellectual. I'm not into calling you that, but clearly you were, but for the listeners that don't know, Luke was previously an entrepreneur. I had an e-commerce business called Theil, almost sold it to Zappos. That deal fell apart and kind of led Luke down this road of like more introspection. But I mean, when you say that you have the extra responsibility, what is that? How does that manifest itself with your students? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, it looks like this. I mean, I tell my students that like at one point in my life, like making as much money as possible, like Sam Bankman-Fried style, like I was never an effective altruist, but I had the mentality that I'm going to make, $1 billion as quickly as I can so that I can give it all away and become this great philanthropist. Like, who hasn't had that fantasy at some point? And, money was the most important thing in my life. So now when I tell my students that, it's not important, but it's definitely not the number one thing in my life. If I say that, they're watching everything that I do because I am a public person. And if I behave as if it is, they spot that immediately, right? So they're like watching what I want, even if I don't articulate it. And that's kind of a terrifying thing. Like, your children know what you care about, right? They know what your priorities are. They know what you want to do. So, in that sense, it just gives me an added level of awareness because there's a difference between a role model and a model of desire. I think a role model just models a role. So like my accountant is a role model to me for the level of like how organized I would like to be, but I'm not. I double booked my schedule that my house cleaners to come today when I forgot I had this podcast. So I'm sitting here in a WeWork right now. First time I've ever done this.
Well, we appreciate it.
So I apologize. My audio might not be as good as it usually is. So he's a role model to me in terms of like his level of like diligence and organization. I have no idea what the man wants or cares about. I don't know what he desires. He's been my accountant for 15 years and I have no idea. So in some sense, he's a role model to me, but he's not a model of desire to me. And the models of, I have models of desire and I have role models, and sometimes they're the same person. But the models of desire are more important than what we typically think of as role models because they're modeling something that's deeper. So you mentioned like, I almost sold my company to Zappos and became really good friends with Tony Hsieh. Like Tony Hsieh was a model of desire for me. he was also a role model because I thought he was a brilliant entrepreneur, but he was also a model of desire. So like I tell the story, or like it's kind of embarrassing, right? I tell the story in the book, like I met Tony and I got super self-conscious because like he drove like a really shitty car, man. Like, you know, and like my car was nicer than his. And I was like, my car should not be nicer than Tony's, right? And I like, and he wore like jeans and a t-shirt every day. So like he was sort of like modeling a desire for me. I mean, there's a signaling function to that, right? You've had a certain amount of success as an entrepreneur. You don't need to like prove anything to anybody. You don't need to drive a nice car. And I remember just like how much meeting him and becoming friends with him changed my entire world, but affected me at the level of what I wanted, because I sort of like wanted a different lifestyle than I thought. You know, he just affected me in a very short period of time in terms of like a lifestyle questions and like the kind of lifestyle that I desired in ways that had nothing to do with building a business, if that makes sense.
Luke, do you know how when people, we talked about with Jack before, but Jack's been through phases where he'll like count every calorie and just be super shredded. You know, but that takes over your mind, right? Like you go eat a meal, and then you'll like yell at the waitress if there's too much sauce on your Caesar salad. So like, what I'm wondering is this: now that you have such a deep understanding of mimetic desire, does it actually ruin your, not ruin, does it affect your life in a negative way, in the sense of like everything you do now, you're just like, fuck, this guy's trying to hack me, or I can't do this because I'm going down the wrong path. Is it one of those things where it's just like cloud hanging over you because you just know how powerful it is, or it's just integrating your life? Did you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like one of those things that's probably healthy not to think about it too much.
Okay.
So no, definitely has a room in my life. I mean, if anything, it just gives like my wife and I and my friends and I like a lot to laugh at ourselves at, right? Okay. Because of how like mimetic we actually are. So like I don't pretend in any way to like have escaped this, because I don't think that it's possible to, right? So like when I got on like the van life bandwagon because I was scrolling Instagram too much in 2020, you know, in the very process of writing this book, like my wife just laughs at me, and like I'm a super mimetic person, right? When it comes to like what I want to eat for dinner, like I usually can't decide until I know what she wants, you know? So, you know, no, it doesn't paralyze me, but I could see how it could kind of like really mindfuck a person if they kind of, especially if you think that you shouldn't be mimetic. And that's like not the right takeaway from the book. It's not that like it's a bad thing or that you shouldn't be. It's that actually you are. And, you know, just become aware of when it might be affecting us in negative ways. That's all.
Well, you had a great tweet where you said this is a recent tweet. You said your wife is in a group chat where they basically share items that they may or may not want, although the things that they're interested in, but it might have literally just been because they saw an Instagram feed. So they post it in this group chat as a way to like release that mimetic desire or something along those lines. But the TLDRs, this sounded like to me like a version of thin desires versus thick desires. Is this correct? And I don't know if you could expound on that a bit more, those two things.
Yeah. So it's really funny. Yeah, my wife's been in this group chat with a bunch of her friends since college, and really jealous of it. I mean, sometimes it annoys the shit out of me, but like in general, I'm really jealous of it. But yeah, so what I call a thin desire is like this highly mimetic desire that, you know, I'll be really into it. I'll think that I really want something today, and it won't be important to me tomorrow or a week from now or even a few months from now, which is different than a thick desire, which is the kind of thing, you know, that I pursue that it's just kind of an endless well, right? The desire will either grow or it doesn't lessen, or it won't deceive me, right? There's some kind of like substance to it. So these thin desires are like, you know, just walking by a window, or, you know, seeing somebody wearing something that I want, or a certain kind of watch, or certain kind of lifestyle that I won't care about, you know, a few weeks from now. So yeah, my wife in this group chat, one of them had this idea that they were just going to open up an iPhone note called Desires. And I use iPhone notes for everything, by the way. Like I'm an iPhone note guy, and I'm like, how didn't I have this idea before this? And it's a shared note, and they just put like things that they want to like buy, like the silly, I don't know, just like clothes that they want, a vacation that they might want to go on, and they put them in there for everybody else to see. And it's kind of like a way to hold each other accountable, and they won't act on anything that goes in the desires note for like at least a week or a couple of weeks. And 99% of the stuff that goes in that note, they don't really care about anymore. And they just look back on it and they just laugh at each other and laugh at themselves. So I thought it was a brilliant little tactic to use.
That sounds like a wanting app waiting to be made right there.
Yeah,
And then you upsell. Yeah, you're allowed 5 desires a month. You get extra $2. We'll give you one more desire, and then $2 more you get images.
That's right.
But
yeah, I'm embarrassed I didn't have the idea. Yeah, I hope she doesn't start that app and make a ton of money with it.
Sorry, look, I was going to ask a follow-up question to that, because when you said that, that really resonated with me. I think everyone's had that feeling of, I really want something, and you're really motivated to get it, and then time passes, you're like, that was so dumb. Why I didn't even need that in the first place. But like, could you give examples of stuff that has stuck? And I think you called it a thick versus thin desire there. So, and like, what if I was trying to decipher which one was which? Is it literally just a matter of waiting a few weeks, or is there another thing I should be kind of filtering for myself when I'm thinking about it?
There's a lot of things. That's a great question. And I think there's a lot of things that can kind of help make the decisions or discern what's the difference between thin and thick. So I started noticing something about myself when, I was building companies, that I had, ever since I was a kid, I'm just a total nerd, man. I love reading philosophy. I always have. And I like reading classic literature. And I was finding myself like going, like I would work until 8 p.m. and then I would go to a 24-hour coffee shop in LA where I was building my first company. And I would just like read this stuff until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd get a few hours of sleep and get back up and do it again. And I started doing this for a while, to the point where it like, I realized that I needed like more of that. Like that's the kind of thick desire that wasn't going away. It's kind of like wanting to drink at the well of like some wisdom that's been around for a very long time. And my day job, the companies that I was building, which were logistics heavy and tech heavy, that's fine. I mean, I like that, but there was something like missing that I could only do that for so long, and then I would kind of get bored and I'd want to build a new product. That's the problem, right? So like, I'm a bad product manager in the sense that I can't like stay with any product that I've ever built for like a long period of time, right? So it's like, I either have to sell it, and if I don't, I have a problem because I get bored. It's like maybe, so I think like I had like for me, like there was a thick desire there that I realized that I sort of always had. And I was like, Luke, if you really want to be really fulfilled, you're going to have to find some way to nourish that. And like, it's different for every single one of us. But I think the lesson that I learned was like, I sort of ignored my history, my background, even little things that if I'd been paying attention, like I would have learned about myself from my own childhood, like things that have kind of like always been a part of who I am. And, just getting caught up in the hustle, the hustle makes you forget a lot of things. And, that's just one example. There's been a lot of other things I've realized about myself. The older I get, the more mature that I get.
Yeah, I love that.
Wow, what he's trying to say is you need to start that Arsenal blog again.
Yeah.
Your Arsenal football.
The older I get, the more I realize everything comes back to the things we did as teenagers in bedrooms. Well, that sounds a little not what I wanted, but I mean, when I say bedroom, I meant to say like
in many ways that is true, Bilal.
That's true as well. But the innocent version of what I meant to say was
you don't need to walk it back at all, brother.
Yeah.
Like you nailed it. Rafa, you might need to edit that out. Don't clip him. But
no, but all jokes aside, I mean, I literally had a vision of this tiny bedroom where there was a computer in the corner, which also is not helping my cause right now. But I would come home, drop my bag, I'd play Championship Manager for about 8 hours.
Into like a total,
I know. I'm just really.
Close the door, lock it, put a chair up against the door, turn on the white noise.
But no, yeah. All jokes aside, that's the filter, man. But and then look, you also mentioned you're a teacher now. You said
I am a teacher, yeah.
And so,
by the way,
like
writing is a thick desire for me.
Yeah.
Like I love to write. I was trying to write books. My mom was an artist, and I was trying to write books when I was like 5, and I was like asking her to illustrate them for me.
Wow.
And that's like another one of those things,
that's
right?
Cool.
That it's only been in the last 6 or 7 years that I've taken that seriously. And that's like, the more I do it, the more I want to do it. That's like an indication of the thick desire. Thin desire is kind of the opposite, right? Like the more you feed it, kind of the less hungry you are.
Oh, so, that's great. That's a great example.
Yeah, and teaching is
infinite game, if you will.
An infinite game. Yep. And teaching is a great supplement to writing because you know how it is. Like, I mean, you don't really know how well you understand something until you have to teach it. So it's really super complementary to the writing. Like I remember 2019 when I was about to start writing Wanting, I got up in front of my class and I was going to give a lecture on Mimetic Desire. And man, I wish that thing was recorded because I don't think any of them had any idea what mimesis was by the end of that lecture. It was
just
pretty
gonna
bad.
be like this podcast because I butchered the question so bad.
I've had a few years to work on it now.
Yeah, you're crisp on it. I just want to say that based on kind of Bilal's question of the management of these different desires, there's actually one part of the book which I thought was maybe it was a bit of a throwaway line, but I'm like, oh, this is great. You had a friend that he and a close college, him and a college roommate or college classmate had become the frenemies essentially, right? They'd come up, they'd done professional things, and they'd all be looking at each other and be, oh, this guy raised X, this guy's doing startup Y, and then one day, I guess you had sent like a piece of media to your friend, and you're like, hey, look at what Joe X is doing, and your friend's just like, you know what, man, like, actually, don't send this to me anymore. I stopped trying to follow this guy because, he clearly understood that he was modeling his life after this guy, right? Is that something that you've heard a lot where people like, just, I don't want to see this person? And it's nothing malicious, right? It's just like, I've identified this individual or this trend as something I don't want in front of my face because I know it's just going to influence me. Totally,
yeah. I mean, he wouldn't have used the word that mimetic rivalry, but that's what he was in, and he just knew it. I mean, I think everybody kind of has this idea of what mimetic desire is or what that can be like when you become tethered in an unhealthy way to another person, right? So you kind of gotta be knowing what they're doing. I mean, classic case is like, you break up with somebody and like you just like stalking them to see like who they're dating next, right? I mean, it's like that's not healthy. And then you have to ask yourself, like, what percentage of your energy is devoted to knowing what's going on with that person? And that's keeping you from whatever it is that you need to do, the art that you need to create. So it interferes with the creative process, right? I mean, I think as a writer or an artist, I understand what it's like more than ever, right? Because like I have authors that I really admire, and like artists that I admire, and it's good to like know what they're up to and be inspired by them. But at a certain point, I have to shut everything down and write myself, right? Because I mean, if I'm just like constantly tethered to what they're doing, it doesn't really allow the creative process to unfold the way that I think it should. So there's like, to some extent, you have to put on like horse blinders as part of the creative process in order for the stuff that needs to come out, or else it will always in some way be completely derivative of whoever else you're looking to. Also not wrong though, right? It's the idea that you kind of mentioned in the book too, is like people also need to understand that it's what you said a bit earlier. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have mimetic desire. It's just like there's a continuum, obviously, between like trying to recreate something from scratch versus, we talk a lot about here, the 3% rule is like, listen, 100 billion people have lived on this earth. The odds that you're creating something whole cloth original is very unlikely. But having said that, you also don't want to be sucked in. Yeah, and I don't even, it's a balance. And one of my favorite examples is like Kobe Bryant cited Michael Jordan, and he imitated everything. He watched a bunch of game film. He imitated his style, and then kind of naturally, before he knew it, he just developed his own. So I think like we think of imitation and innovation as two totally separate things. And in my opinion, those two things exist on a continuum, right? At some point, you're imitating, there's like some kind of a phase change that happens, like a plane taking off from a runway, and it kind of like the imitation becomes innovation. So, the message that I've taken away is like, you just need to kind of be aware, like, when is it time to shut it down and just be alone for a while to create? Like, who should I look to for inspiration? And just being aware of the influences and the models. So it's not like one or the other is good or bad. But in the case of the dude that you're referring to that I mentioned in the book, he had just realized that he was completely tracking this other guy's career in an unhealthy way, to the point where if he went into a certain kind of business, he wanted to get into that industry just so he could try to like show him up or have more success in that industry, right? Like, and the crypto is actually the example where he had a business that had nothing to do with crypto. So like, should I really like shut down what I'm doing just to follow him into the next thing? And the decision had nothing to do with the opportunity to create something cool. It had everything to do with kind of the ego and the measurement. And that's where he realized that was becoming a problem.
I would love actually for Bilal and Jack to give examples. I want to exclude myself because I'm not introspective. Examples of when they've had to track other. Actually, I'll go first. I'll just super simply. Over in 2022, I thought in my mind I had to raise a solo fund. I was convinced. I saw everybody also tech Twitter that was had a big audience. They all had or trying to raise rolling funds. I'm like, I need to do this. And then I realized I don't like looking at pitch decks. It's like the biggest. I hate it. Like people send me pitch decks all the time, and like I always tell this joke, but like I'll go to the middle of the pitch deck, like slide 8, and then write a reply about slide 8 to make it look like it went through the pitch deck. Oh man, you're slide 8. Whoa, you really nailed the formatting on this slide. You know, as an example of me having gone through. So that's an example for me where people, I still get asked by people, it's like, hey, well, are you thinking about investing? Yeah, no, I have no interest. It's not my skill set, and the only reason I've ever wanted to do it because that's all other people want to do it. That is like that. That is Luke's wanting in a nutshell for me. Bilal and Jack, do you have an example?
Yeah, definitely. But go on, Jack, go for it.
I would probably do starting a business and trying to basically in the agency world, you're trying to secure the like flashiest clients possible, right? And basically, the bigger the name of the client, the more of a ball ache it's going to be to service the business. That's basically like a linear relationship.
I've never heard the word ball ache before, by the way. That is the first time in my life in an NA podcast.
Is that? Yeah, I think that's a little English one. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really? Yeah, maybe. I thought that was pretty common, but no, that it's the right word to use in this instance. But like recognizing that and like doing what you're good at instead of trying to like find a name to attach your thing to was like a hard realization. I think I had this like moment where I had this client come into town, lived in New York at the time, and it was just Celia and I working in the business, and they were coming from Italy to our office. We had to rent a space in New York and like make it look like there was some office. We were running this business out of a 400 square foot apartment in Crown Heights, but you had to like play up this thing like, no, we're legit. We're in this, you know, the 10001 zip code, and like come to the office and speak to the door person. And they just in that meeting, like, what am I doing, man? This is ridiculous. Like if I have to like inflate the, I don't know, the image of this business to the point where like that's the thing that is winning us work. And half the world works that way, and fair enough. If you like doing that, then go for it. But not my idea of fun. So that like, I think that was one moment where it was just like, all right, we're just going to be completely forthcoming about the fact that this is like not that. You know, we're not trying to build a team of 20 people. We're not trying to rent a glass office in Manhattan, and whoever doesn't want to work with us as a function of that is a great filtering mechanism for building this thing. And yeah, it was the right decision.
Jack, I went through something similar as you with the agency stuff as well, but I actually like ended up flipping it as kind of like a selling point to be like, you're not paying for this overhead. Like that is why they're trying to charge you X amount and we can charge you this amount because and the other thing I had similarly was when I was younger, I always had this thing of like worrying about being the young guy. I don't know if you guys have had this where like, you know, I started that company, I was very young, and I'd go to these entrepreneurship sort of things and I'm like 17, right? And then I go to Google, I was 21, a lot of people like 26, 28, 30. And I would, on my first day, I remember being like, hi, I'm Bilal, I'm 21 years old. And it was just like the automatic
in your
thing.
suit though, right?
Yeah, in my suit, exactly.
Bilal's the only person to ever interview with Google wearing like a full suit and tie. He showed up, he's like, hey, where's the office, guys?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that just sounds like imposter syndrome a bit, right?
No, yeah. Well, it was more like I just had no experience. I was like, that's how I introduced myself. I'm from London. I'm this age. This is my name. It's like, okay, whatever. And then over time, I realized like so many people are like, oh my God, you're this age. And they're only a few years older than me, but it becomes this psychological thing of like, oh, now I need to overcompensate. And now I need to say I deserve to be here like you are, whatever. But yeah, over time, you kind of just get over that. But to answer your original question, Trung, looping it back, I had a similar thing to Jack there. But the one I'll share is more on, like, we all publish content, right? Like, we've got the podcast. I have another podcast, Luke, called Collab. And I've also written for like years, but I think in like 2020, like all of us, we're all on Twitter, like writing and sharing a bunch of stuff. But like for the last, basically, since we've done this podcast, pretty much, I just stopped writing everywhere. Like, I checked my Instagram the other day, my personal Instagram. I haven't posted for like several years. And the reason is, it's not to say that that isn't the optimal thing to do if you're trying to grow your Substack or grow your podcast or make a name for yourself or whatever. But at some point, I got to a point where I said, I'm only doing this because I want to do a podcast, because I love doing a podcast. I like having long-form conversations with people, and I like what they represent in the world. I'm just going to keep doing that, right? And so that's kind of at one point, like, my happiness level just went through the roof, because I said, it's not to say I wouldn't ever do this again in the future, but right now I was like, I don't even love doing this. I'm having to like think about, oh, what am I going to write today? Am I going to schedule out a tweet? Am I using this random tool to like generate ideas? And I'm like, that's not, like, even if I could do it, it's not like what I enjoy doing. So the main reason I do creative stuff is because I want to enjoy my day-to-day life. And if I'm not enjoying it, there's no point in me doing it. So
desire.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was my answer there, Trung. But good question.
No, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I mean, it's like, are people, what version of me are people like? I don't know. Are they coming from my work and my art and my writing, or are they coming because I'm saying the right things? And it can become exhausting having to kind of like always need to conform to what people expect of you, and people end up putting you into a box really quickly, right? It's like classic audience capture. So I've just decided, I mean, it kind of reminds me of what, you know, both of you have said, right? Like at a certain point, you're like, I'll be miserable if I have to kind of like conform my life around like the fancy, like entertaining, putting on the dog and pony show. Like it just gets to be exhausting after a while, and takes away time and energy from you. Just like, you either like my work or you don't. It shouldn't rely on me like hosting you in this fancy building, right? So like, I think everybody needs to decide as a creator, like what kind of like trade-offs they're willing to make. And I've kind of decided, like, you never know what you're going to get. I don't even publish on a regular schedule, because I'm like, if I have to do that, I know that eventually it's just going to get exhausting for me. And I'm doing it because I like the spontaneity of doing it. And the people that will unsubscribe, you know, and there's like this process of kind of curating an audience, and the people that stay are the people that actually like the real me. It's the way that I think about it. It's kind of like being in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be yourself.
Yeah.
That's why 6 months in, you start farting in the room, because before you're holding it. No, I'm actually, like literally there was a moment in my relationship with my now wife, like I used to walk out to the balcony and like fart, and she was like, now I know why you're on the balcony.
You're getting fresh air, Trung, every like, 17 minutes.
I gotta take this call.
After that
chili. Taking it. I had zero calls to take. Listen, if you don't like the parts, this is just not the newsletter.
It's not going to work out.
Yeah. Well, farting, that's the perfect pivot to the next question I had. Perfect. No, because I look at we got like you about 12 more minutes.
Trung is the king of transitions, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed that. He's got some incredible hard transition. It's so good. Go on, Trung, what you got?
No, because Luke's last ride or drive newsletter, well, two ago, you were talking about AI. I actually saw two things you wrote about AI recently. One was a tweet about generative AI, and you're like, I haven't felt a single thing from like any output I've seen from GPT-4, and I'm in the same boat. And even though I'm shilling AI-powered research app, coupon NIA 150, what I was going to say was, what are your thoughts, and how can you apply Mimetic Desire, Mimesis, and all that whole theory to what's happening in generative AI?
I need to think about this for another couple of years before I feel like I have like anything worthwhile to say, but I'll say something that's maybe not worthwhile. I don't know. I think like generative AI is probably both better and worse than anybody's sort of thinks that it is, right? I do think it's a monumental change. I think I'm just trying to think of like how it is true. So I tweeted that out, and I was like, I have not personally found an instance of using ChatGPT-4 that has like benefited me. And then I received a ton of replies to that tweet. Like one person said that it helped like save their dog, and another person helped diagnose an illness. And so I know that stuff is real, and Trung is frozen. So I hope he's reacting.
He'll be back. We do this once a week. It's part of the show.
So I know that there's a lot of great use cases out there. I think some of the like AI is going to kill us all in 6 months stuff is kind of crazy. One of my favorite books, I think is worthwhile reading for anybody, is The Myth of AI by Eric Larson. There's a lot of confusion about what consciousness actually is, and like people are throwing around a lot of words without really understanding what they mean. And if we invest too much kind of like hype in generative AI, like we forget the wonderful thing that is like human creativity and ingenuity and the human brain and like the best of humanity. So that's kind of the point of the book, right? It's like, let's not outsource our thinking to AI and pretend it's going to solve all of our problems. I think that Mimesis plays a huge role in it because, I mean, AI by its very nature is derivative of us and our brains. I mean, we invented it. So in some sense, it's derivative by its nature, and it's mimetic, and it can imitate what it's giving. And the fascinating thing for me is to think about, like, what if generative AI begins to desire things, right? I mean, what does that even mean, right? Like, can AI like actually want something? It's like synthetic desire. I mean, it's a super weird concept to think about, and it certainly won't be the same kind of desires that we have, and they'll have to be derivative of ours. So in a sense, I worry that generative AI, to the extent that it mimics wanting or mimics desire, it will only be able to want the things that we want, that we show it is worth wanting. So in a sense, I think it will like supercharge mimesis in a way. And that's something that I don't see anybody talking about that. I think it's something that we have to be careful about. But we're using a lot of, I mean, I don't even like calling it desire because I don't think it's the same thing. I mean, I am thinking about, in strictly utilitarian terms, like, how can I use it in positive ways? And I'm starting to write another book right now, and I think it'll be tremendously valuable in the research that I'm doing for that book. But I just need to figure out the right freaking questions to ask it, because so far it's just frustrating me. I mean, I've got some of the most ridiculous answers that I've ever seen from ChatGPT, even about like who I am in my work and kind of like what Mimetic Desire. It hasn't got anything right yet. So I'm giving it a little bit more time before I invest too much time and energy.
Apologies for the Canadian internet there, but I did hear 90% of that answer. Thank you. Jack, Bilal, did you have any last ones? I got one last one, but I'm going to hold out for you guys.
I want to get you to hit that. I was just saying, Luke, while you were saying that, I asked ChatGPT and Bard what they desire. And it's quite an interesting, I mean, the ChatGPT one is basically saying, I don't have desires. I'm a machine designed to process, generate language, blah, blah, blah. My purpose is to assist you. Bard had a bit more detail. I was kind of surprised. But yeah, I don't have to read out the whole thing. That's not the best content for a
Google
podcast.
Employee, as a disclaimer, just
we got a split test. We got to see what's going on. Got to make my own decisions on this.
The Bard one was much better. Now, did you guys have any? Go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to come at this from my own hammer nail bias on the visual side, Luke. Like this idea of creating symbols or like aggregating visual consciousness in a way that feels like completely different than anything that we've collectively experienced before, where the ability, like the Edward Bernays reference that you made earlier, like the barrier to creating images or symbols, or like, your poignant observation about the eyes being the organ that create, or like the entry point for Mimetic Desire. If all the inputs for that now, the barrier to entry for creating those inputs goes to zero, like the implications of that, I think, are very profound on obviously creating fake I use that term with heavy inverted commas for anyone listening, like fake images, misinformation, however you want to define that. Like anybody doctoring an image in any way, shape, or form is changing reality and the context in which they present it, etc., etc. But I think the image stuff has a more immediate and tangible, violent effect on how we interact with one another. I don't know what the answer is there, but like the language that was in that piece that we collaborated on that I spoke through at the start just makes me think about that idea. And if you think about platforms like Instagram, TikTok, like places where people are like outsourcing their desires to, or like at least looking to places that aggregate, like, this is the thing you should be aiming for. This person has this. If like those images can come from, basically people don't have to gather the resources to make the image anymore. You follow what I'm saying? Like the ability to fake a lifestyle.
Exactly.
It either has a positive effect because people know that it may or may not be true, or it has a negative effect in the sense that everybody kind of in this more exponential mimetic desire environment. So anyway, not a conclusion by any means, just something fascinating to see. We'll see play out.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, it makes me immediately think of my students who come as freshmen in college and have really, most of them really have no idea what they want to do. They're just trying to figure out their major and like where they're going to intern for the summer. So like imagine asking ChatGPT, like, here's a bit about myself, like what should my career be, or something like that, and like have it kind of like determine life paths for us. That's a super weird thing to think about, right? Like you can kind of outsource the hard work of like taking risks and making decisions and like kind of like what has made life so fascinating for me. That's a crazy thing to think about, right?
I think you tweeted something along these lines, but like the homogenization of this stuff where it's coming from one voice, like even before, like your point about career advice, if you'd have put it in Google, it would have come up in context of like this, law school X talking about law careers, or person X with this name and this background and this history talking about the pros and cons of this career. Whereas this like spits out something that doesn't have a author or doesn't contextualize the response in a way that like helps you judge it, Do you follow what I'm saying there? Where it's like, this is the answer. ChatGPT assigned this is the answer, not like this is an opinion presented by X.
These sources,
which I think is inferred in the old world.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily tested against lived experience. It's just exactly. It just kind of comes from this cloud of unknowing, this kind of mysterious thing. Which I mean, I remember like distinctly. I tweeted about this a couple of days ago because I've had this happen to me. You guys know what the Stendhal Effect is? It's the French author Stendhal said when he went to Florence for the first time, the kind of like beauty of the city and walking into the churches and everything made him physically ill. And it's now been coined by the medical profession as the Stendhal Effect. Like when you walk into like a museum and you're standing in front of like a piece of artwork or something like that, it makes you like lightheaded and dizzy and you can't take it in. And anyways, I had something like that. I lived in Italy for a few years and I had something like that happen to me where I was like, my world was rocked when I just being exposed to like the beauty of a couple piazzas and stuff like that. And I can honestly say like it changed my life forever. Like it made me realize that I have this need for like how much art, how important art is to me. And that I connected that to my family and my mom, who's an artist, and totally changed the trajectory of my life, right? Like I was planning to be like a doctor or lawyer before that. So that like, how do you, that's just like some tacit awareness of lived experience that I had out there in the world through my eyes. It's going back to the eyes, right? I'm taking in like billions of information. It's being processed through my eyes and had this profound effect on me. and it's very mysterious, right? So I love, I don't know. I love living with that sense of kind of mystery where you have those moments where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen next, but you just know that your world's been rocked, right? You could be meeting somebody for the first time. You can't even put into words what it was about that encounter. So that's, I like leaving the world open to kind of collisions and spontaneity, and like telling my students, like, yeah, you can ask ChatGPT-4 like to give you some advice, but when it comes to like walking outside and, you know, having unexpected encounters, like make sure that you're not looking down at your phone and that you're ready for those things when they happen, whether it's, you know, your future spouse or whatever it is. Like, be open and be ready to kind of process that through the lived experience that you have.
Yeah, beautiful.
Man. I wrote this in the in a Visualize Value Discord last night. The like alpha now exists by going analog, like in all of these. Like you want to make something original, like go to the library, because you're also getting fed information that has been validated by the most nodes at any given time. It's like you're just funneled into the trend over and over and over and over, eyeballs that are like, we're going to give you this piece of content that we know you're going to look at. Even, I mean, everybody's commented on this at this point, but it's like the For You feed on Twitter is an obvious move for attention purposes, but like probably net negative experience for most people. Like you open Twitter and there's like people fighting, like smashing grocery carts into each other or whatever. I saw when I woke up this morning, I was like, what is this? I didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
Go to the library.
I'm glad I smashing grocery carts.
Investment advice.
No, I know Luke's got a boogie, so I think that's the perfect thing to let Luke off on. And you guys want to keep chatting afterwards? I'd love to decompress.
Yeah, we can decompress.
Marinating on
Luke,
Luke's
appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank
really
you, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Everyone go check out the book and subscribe to the Substack. We'll share those links in the show notes below as well. Luke, we'll have to do this again, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. Not enough time, but I'll be tweeting at all you guys in the next week or so. So
I'll be there.
I'll see you in the Twitterverse. All right, guys. See you.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Nice one, boys. Should we just keep rolling, yeah?
Yeah, let's actually let's jump off on Jack's point about the Twitter algo. I don't know. I don't know how much you guys have read on the open sourceness of it. Did you guys take a look at some of those?
Yeah, we were chatting in the DMs about some of the threads.
Well, yeah, we shared some, and a lot of
some surprising things in there, which we can maybe talk about in a minute. But I'm happy. You're talking about the For You page, you said.
We should talk about it because it's a good.
I'll list off the top line. Go ahead.
I was just going to say maybe Luke's frame of the like thin and thick desires. The thin desire is the fight video, the fucking like horrendous content that you see that's just served up to the most eyeball. I mean, am I bad? Are you guys seeing that stuff, right?
No, I'm seeing. Right? I'll be. Yeah. I have to keep switching to following as well.
Fights. I've seen a lot of school fights.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's not like me being deranged and wanting that stuff. It's like that is like a biological. People are going to react to that.
When there's a fight in the playground, everyone looks, right? Everyone shouts, fight, and runs over. That's probably why. So
so like you can be transparent about the algorithm, but what's interesting to me is like that's not necessarily indicative of value, right? The idea of value being confused with what grabs the most attention, depending on your definition of value. From the perspective of someone who wants eyeballs on a social media platform, that's value. From somebody who like wants to develop their brain into something other than like a sewer, that is not valuable, right?
That's other than a garbage bin.
Yeah, so there are conflicting incentives involved, transparency or not.
Yeah.
Which is like you're building it based on. I'm just conflicted about this because I love the transparency component of it, and I think the like signal versus noise, or the pull up the show me what you care about. It's like what you look at, what you spend money on. It's interesting because there is a conflict there.
Show me your For You feed. Show me your
chat GPT search history as well.
People show me your For You feed, and I'll show you who you are. Yeah, like that's an interesting thing, but that I actually think that's a good frame for it because it doesn't show you that, right? It shows you like what you are, not who you are, not to get too philosophical, but it's like, here are the things that you're going to react to biologically. Here's the shit that's going to push your buttons, not necessarily the stuff that's going to
the teenager in the bedroom, like I said, basically. Same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, man, it's just been a fascinating week, man. But the transparency is definitely quality, man. Quality move.
It is, yeah.
Help people understand it more.
You were going to give a rundown of it.
Yeah, I agree with Jack that, I mean, here, compared to any other social network, right? Because the criticisms are like, well, actually, you actually don't know what good is a source code if you don't know what weights they're putting on each variable? What good is a source code if you don't have the underlying like user data? Well, it's like, yeah, obviously he's not going to put the entire thing on. I mean, he's obviously said that, but let's be honest here. That's not going to happen. It's not happening today, and it clearly didn't. But, you have an idea of at least why things are getting recommended to you. And a lot of it is just intuition, right? It's like I'll just give one example. Links get downvoted. We know this. We talk about it all the time, right? Like, there's literally like Bilal constantly saying, Trung, should we not post an IA launch with the link? Like every week he's just like, Trung, are we sure we should do this? But I'll tell you the trade-off on that nobody looks at the second tweet. That's the trade-off, right? That's what me and Bilal talk about. But the thing about let's talk a bit about what they did open source. So the open source, the recommendation stuff, which is what a lot of people looked at, and the TLDR in it. Anybody that's ever worked in social networks or even broadly knows it. It's not surprising what's going on here. They're trying to figure out a way for I think they get 100 million tweets a day or something ridiculous. They're trying to figure out how to serve you 1,500 tweets, like whenever you open that app that are relevant to you. And basically the way they determine relevance is, do you engage with that tweet? And engagement from Twitter is likes, retweets, replies, time spent on the tweet itself, and time spent on the person's profile. So these are all the variables that are getting mixed in. I mean, we talk about YouTube on the show a lot. Same deal, right? YouTube, Bilal knows, what was it? Watch time is the big.
It's like if you think of the journey, it's click-through rate for how many people clicked on a thumbnail. That's like the headline equivalent of a news article. Then it's basically time spent. There's actually it's like retention. Retention is the better the word. So how long did you stay? Did you stay for the first 30 seconds? That's like weighted in one way. And then how long did you stay and engage? Then also likes and comments and stuff like that as well. But I think that's less important.
Yeah, Twitter's the same. Bilal nailed it. It's like likes and comments are less relevant to YouTube than watch time, right? So that's what they kind of
I think also the common thing, people think of views being the number one metric, right? Versus like time spent.
Total
you don't
watch
see
time
that.
is more
You don't
important.
see that from the outside. And I think people would judge a piece of content on, that got 2 million views, which to be fair, if it got 2 million views, the watch time was high too, but that's the part you don't see is on the other side.
Bone Thugs Crossroads, when it says 100 million views, people are watching that from beginning to end.
Or they're falling into that Biggie verse, one of the best verses of all time, man. Jesus Christ. Anyway, go on. So that was the summary,
Yeah, that's some parts of it, which I'll kind of talk through how they actually do it. Is like, basically, they have 145,000 different clusters of how they kind of classify content. Like, that's freaking a lot, right? And I mean, some of the categories are
you say that, is that kind of like Netflix, when we talk about Netflix serving
all
up
the micro categories, right?
like British teenage dramas or whatever.
Exactly, right? So like the biggest categories are not going to be shocking. It's like football, pop stars, and NBA, right? Like those are ones that like have a lot of followers and people that will be served that type of content. So again, they're trying to whittle you down 1,500 pieces of content. And they do that, they try to split, I think, within people you follow, and then now obviously, as Jack alluded to with the For You, they're jamming in stuff that is like viral. So it's called in-network and out-of-network. So in-network is obviously people that you follow or in lists. Out-of-network is the shopping
Gen Pop, baby.
Or the Gen Pop, right? So
Trung, there's this one here that I saw, Trusted Circle. Is that the same?
Yeah. Trusted Circle.
Thing?
I think they're basic. I think the Trusted Circle is they see who you engage with the most, and then they call that
I'm just
kind
going
of
to share my screen at the same time. This is your boy Peter Yang. You reference this, right?
Yeah, this is a good tweet.
Yeah.
So
Good summary,
why don't you read through that as to like,
So,
as a tweeter, this is what gives your tweet.
Yeah.
pros and
Peter,
cons.
Twitter algo 101 boost, likes 30x, retweets 20x, Twitter blue 2 to 4x, trusted circle 3x, images, videos 2x, replies 1x, negatives URL only, no text, mute, block, unfollow, report. That one's a bit more obvious. But
Wait,
I
can
think
you scroll
the one,
down a bit, because it says this guy asked, anyone know what trusted circle is? And then
and
what
he
does it say
said,
here?
could this be it? Yeah, I mean, it's a big block of text. I'm probably not going to be able to
Yeah, that's
summarize
fine.
that on the pod. But, well, actually, sorry, well, I just clicked it. There's a visual here for people on YouTube. I don't know if that makes much sense. This reminds me of like in 2020, everyone was posting those images of like your map of people that you interact with.
Interact with the most. I
Probably
think that's your
something
trusted
similar to
circle. Yeah.
might be something similar to that. But anyway, but yeah, I think the one that surprised us, I don't know if this is getting too tactical, but the likes versus retweets, I know we talked about that over text or DM or something, because generally speaking, like to me anyway, as a user, I will like way more things than I retweet. And I know from people like you guys who have told me like what helped you guys go viral / grow, like retweets always seem to be way more important. And that still might be the case. It's just maybe the weighting isn't here. Maybe there's like 10 times more likes than retweets. So I don't know how it
actually,
works.
something that could work is like the retweet actually puts you into different feeds where it's more likely to get interacted with, whereas a like is just an individual boost maybe to your...
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that might be like more impressions on your tweet, but not necessarily more like getting in front of new people and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And followers specifically, which is what you were probably trying to get. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, nothing else like real. I mean, the people, like, some surprising things they found was like Elon was hard coded. His name was hard coded into the code base. They had 4 categories. I think it was like power user, a Democrat, Republican, and Elon. I think they already changed it. But what's funny about that? Yeah, that's pretty funny. What that was actually tracking metrics. But obviously, all the haters like, yeah, we don't believe that. But the other thing that that's interesting was, you said there that Twitter Blue gives you a 2 to 4 times boost. I saw a lot of interesting comments. They're like, actually, if that's the case, Twitter either has to put underneath those tweets like some type of promoted, because technically you're paying for promotion, right? That wasn't the deal that you cut exclusively, but if you're getting a boost from being on Blue, like by math, that's what's happening. So people are saying, I think they actually changed that part of the code. I think they de-boosted it so they wouldn't get in trouble with regulators without showing the kind of the ad thing, which is objectively hilarious, right?
That is pretty funny.
Yeah. And then the other part, well, add about Twitter, there's so many things going on. Obviously the verified stuff. I thought it was pretty...
the Doge Twitter logo.
So people that don't know that aren't Twitter, yesterday they replaced the bird icon with the Doge, the Dogecoin logo, which is the dog. I thought it was like the most likely explanation. I heard 2. The first one was that somebody had sued Elon $285 billion for pumping Dogecoin, and that was like a headline story yesterday because he's trying to get thrown out. Obviously, not a serious lawsuit, but they think that he launched this Dogecoin thing to like bury that story. I don't think it was. What I think it was I think this is meant to be an April Fool's joke. But it came out 2 days late because I don't know who's still left to implement that exactly.
That's so funny. That could actually be the most plausible answer, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Which is hilarious. Which is amazing.
It just got delayed, and they're like, "All right, we've done the work for this. We might as well just put it out now." Yeah, that's funny. But
actually, Jack, I just want to sorry, but I want to ask Jack about the verification stuff, because this is germane to your checks project, brother. What did you think about the move to they threatened to get rid of people? Legacy Blue, and then they ended up only really getting rid of the New York Times as blue check, which is hilarious. And then now their other solution was every blue check now says this is either a Twitter Blue subscriber or a legacy. That was the solution, Jack.
So he walked it back then, right?
He basically walked it back, that he didn't get rid of them all, and he combined them into a big mush. And I want your thoughts on that.
Wait, sorry, when you say combined, sorry, before you answer, Jack, are you talking about
the caveat?
The caveat where you click and it
caveat
say,
when you hover over it says it's either blue or legacy.
So now they're just both. So it's a kind of like not.
It's very gangster. Like it's a good. Yeah.
So
like the idea that. I mean, I think that's an interesting solution, like the strong arming all of these people into like basically giving up, you know, like I think the general reception to this in pop culture is like, it is cool to not have the blue check, right? That was going to be the point in time where it was like makers of taste and pop culture would not want to pay $8 for their blue check mark, right? And in not doing that would become like more verified almost. You get what I'm saying? So building a system that doesn't take that away from them, but also doesn't distinguish them from the people who did pay $8 is, to me, a pretty clever way to like still devalue that status, but, you know, get the, I mean, it's kind of fascinating that now there's more speculation around whether or not it was earned or not, which is kind of the point, right? The response to the blue, like the paid Twitter blue subscriber that you see in replies is like, this person paid for Twitter, they're an idiot.
That meme's dead. That meme's dead.
Yeah, right. That's killed now. Whereas now it'll be speculation like, this person only has X number of followers, so they're probably not. Right? It's kind of fascinating how that changes the context of it again. I think Meta just launched theirs too last. Yeah,
they did a verification that also does.
Have they completely got rid of, like, a celebrity won't have the verified check mark?
I don't know what they're doing with that. That's we should figure out what they're doing with that. But I feel like they'll play it way less controversially than Elon,
they go because Instagram is much more linked to the blue
lifestyle. Yeah,
is like they need that, and people actually make legit money on there, right?
Just to give my opinion, to be very honest, like, I get the argument everyone's had about what counts as verified. Obviously, we did a whole episode of Jack on his project being based on this idea, so I don't want to do it to death. But just for me, like, as someone who's trying to filter the internet for crap, and especially nowadays scams, like you guys, I'm sure, get people. I mean, Jack, you had something recently where someone, you know, hacked something.
Yeah.
But before that, you also just get people like changing the name to Jack Butcher and, like, you know, they'll pay for the verified thing and they'll scam people with that, right? And that happens on Instagram to so many people as well. So to me, that is a 10 out of 10 problem. And the actual verified check mark, if you had it, was really helpful for me to understand, this person is the real, you know, Ryan Reynolds. Mm-hmm. This is the right version of that. And so as me trying to filter through the internet for misinformation as it is, this made it way harder to do so. And I think that's a negative thing for the platform. And I think there's just been this weird dance where I don't doubt that Elon Musk and team think that this is, you know, this big talking point that who gets to decide who's important. But sometimes it's actually helpful to know it's The Rock. You know what I mean? I don't think that's that crazy to say he's a noble person. It's like right. Maybe there's a gray area of in between. Like, one person is, you know, a journalist and they got it through their company. Yeah, that is a slightly different thing. But yeah, for me personally, it's just objectively a worse experience. So that's kind of my conclusion on it.
I haven't thought, I love actually Jackson thought through more of this, but there definitely has to be a way to get, I understand the logic to pay for verified, like, or pay to use the platform, like increase the cost of bad behavior. But to Bilal's point, like, as a user of the platform and not a big content creator, but content consumer, like, knowing that there was some process, even if it, and let's be clear, scams were happening with blue checks way before Elon, right? Like I would see blue checks with 800 followers, like, trying to show crypto. So does that, I guess.
Some of them even started companies and swindled the whole world. Yeah, so, but yeah.
And raised $3 billion for a crypto platform, a crypto trading platform. I'm actually trying to, I'm thinking through, like, there is one game theory play here, right? And it hasn't worked out so far. But it was the idea that you get the organizations to pay. So it's $10,000 a year, $50 for each person a month. It's pricey, but that's also a form of verification, right? Like, if you go to, as the easiest example, I have 1/4 work week, right? Work week pays for that second icon for the organization. And funny enough, Jeff Bezos recently accepted that he got his Amazon one. People were trolling him because it looked like he was refusing to do it, but now he has it. But like that is also a way to circumvent what Bilal said. But now you're clearly trying to find ways to drum up money, right? And I actually think that I do think that we're headed to a world where you got to pay for these type of services. Like it's pretty clear that Apple really fucked a lot of people with this digital advertising play, right?
Yeah.
Got to be new revenue streams. I'm not saying that this is the solution. I'm saying it's clear Elon is experimenting and the team are experimenting. There have been L's. Like the Twitter Blue rollout in November is objectively one of the funniest things that ever happened. And they also had to roll that back. They had to fix that and like put layers into place with, to many people, seemed obvious in hindsight what was going to happen. But yeah, I think there's got to be a way to move towards a solution where you get people to pay for this type of stuff. And it's so hard, right? It's like, it is such an uphill battle. And I understand why. I don't want to pay for I get it. So yeah, that's just my thinking around the verification in general. It's like, they got to figure something out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Crazy if you think about the Apple thing is a good observation where it's like downstream of different incentives, but paying $15 a month for Netflix or whatever streaming service you use versus like $8 for Twitter, which for the average like reasonably online person, you probably get a lot more screen time in on Twitter than you do on Netflix. I guess the argument is that the people that use the platform are making the content, therefore like that logic doesn't make sense to many people where it's like, I'm creating the stuff, so why am I paying to use the network? And
you're gonna have good features, right? It's to your point, Jack.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
I think bundling the verification with the features and like making it so not necessarily politicized, but such a hot topic.
Yeah,
really, because there are, like, I keep saying it, like the Nuzzle top articles feature on Twitter is incredible. I would pay $5 to $8 a month.
What does that do? Sorry, Trunk. What is that?
It aggregates for the 15 to 20 top articles that your network's talking about, and then the network. So like that's to me the best way.
Is that happening now?
Yeah, you go to top articles if you have Twitter Blue. It's amazing. It's an amazing feature. And you see what everybody in your network is talking about that one piece of content.
Oh yeah.
So really aggregates, like you're talking about discovery.
Well, there's a good show me your top articles. I'll tell you who you are. That's a good one.
No, but what I mean is like, but that gets totally lost in the verification thing, right? To Bilal's point, it's like Bilal's association with verification and $8 payment is like this total cluster F. Like I don't know what to really trust anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas like if it had just been famous, like people are paying for really cool features.
Exactly. I pay for YouTube Premium. I pay for Spotify. I pay for like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I happily pay because the features warrant me paying and I get enough value out of them. And so far, as someone who's mostly reading on Twitter, I'm not getting that at the current moment, but that might change. For example, if they literally just flipped the switch and said there's 0 ads on Blue, I would probably just pay because I hate seeing ads, and so on my desktop, I can use an ad blocker, but 98% of the time I'm on Twitter is on my phone. Yeah. And And honestly, the ads on Twitter aren't that annoying. Like, I kind of skip them anyway. But on YouTube, they're super annoying, so I pay for that.
Bilal, I don't know if you saw that, but Rafa, if you want to cut that, when Bilal was describing looking at his phone, he totally just looked at an imaginary phone and started scrolling.
No, my phone's over here. That's why. I was looking at my phone. But anyway, I think it's worth us discussing that. Anything else, boys, before we wrap it up?
I do. This is probably out of place at this point, but I'll just add the one thought about Luke's book. So, Wanting is an incredible book. I mean, Jack worked with Luke on the NFT stuff around it, and Jack obviously made some really sick visuals that hopefully we can get some links to. But the one thing that we haven't mentioned this entire chat was Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel, other than previous to Luke, and who Luke did meet for this book, Peter Thiel was a student of René Girard, and I would advise reading the book. And 0 to 1, Peter Thiel's book, is heavily influenced by René Girard. That's why there's two things that Peter Thiel talks about business in his book 0 to 1. He actually never mentions René Girard's name though, and Luke talks about it in his own book Wanting, about why Peter Thiel did that. Peter Thiel's like, this idea of mimetic desire is just so powerful. it just pervades everything that humanity does. I didn't want to like blow people's minds and like have to reassess everything while I'm trying to talk about business, right? So he tried to take the lessons from Mimesis and Mimetic Desire into 0 to 1. So 2 I'd put for our business builders out there is like, this is why Peter Thiel says, competition is for suckers. It's like, you don't want to be in a situation where you're competing against somebody, you're just tracking what they're doing, and like you're caught in this mimetic design. You want to build like a true monopoly. You're in your own lane, you're not worried about what other people are doing, right? This is why he says monopolies are great. They're quote unquote easy once you crack them. Another thing he did was at PayPal, when he was at Confinity, which merged with Elon Musk X to form PayPal, at Confinity, he would give every employee 1 job only. And the reason he did that was because he knew that young, ambitious people, especially at a startup like that he was building, they would all want similar things if it was a free-for-all. They don't want to become COO. They don't want to become head of sales. He's like, you have 1 job. This is the only job that I'm judging you on. You do this job. I'm not going to assign that job to anyone else. So he diffused mimetic desire and like diffused any conflict around work by just giving people 1 job and not letting them compete for the same resources, which I thought was pretty cool.
Do you know how that happens when they want to progress though?
Well, it was such a crazy startup environment. Yeah, it was like, and that was just for PayPal at the time. They didn't last very long there. But it got sold to eBay, obviously. And then
because I like the idea. I'm just I was curious
it's
how
idea,
it
right?
plays out.
Well, I don't know how scalable that is, but I mean, there seems to be truth to it because you always hear about the politics and backstabbing in corporations, right? Last thing I'll add is Zuckerberg, why he invested in Facebook. He's the first outside investor of Facebook. Reid Hoffman, his PayPal colleague, introduced him to Zuckerberg. And then he saw Facebook. He immediately got it. He's like, you're showing people your desires. He's like, the entire platform is showing what your bio is, showing what you do. At this time, it's at Harvard, it's at the Ivy Leagues.
It was started up by rating people, right? Like,
it's like this is it, right? It's like, this is a desire, like, machine. He's like, this is mimetic desire. He's like, this is hacking, like marrying technology with mimetic desire. He's like, this is going to be huge. So yeah, he turned 500,000 to $1 billion with his Facebook investment. But anyways, read the
Roth IRA account as well, or something like that. Yeah, incredible. All right, boys. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. That was a good episode, boys. Enjoyed that. Thanks for getting Luke on, boys. I think that was a good guest. Hope you all enjoyed that. Anything else before we wrap up, boys?
No, man, that was great. No show this week.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, you already got one in, so we'll save that for later.
People listen to Creator Lab. CRATORLAB. Leave a review.
There we go. All right, boys. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.